Hi again, everyone. I'm Nick Niglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman, and this is Lead It Like Lasso, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. We are the co-authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life. And as of this week, we are also the authors of The Business of You, available on Amazon. Whoop, whoop.
So, this podcast is an extension of many of the elements outlined in our book, Lead It Like Lasso. We invite you to join us as we take a deep dive into each episode and explore the leadership principles as they played out in the series. And for today's episode, we're diving into season 3, episode 4, which is named The Big Week.
Big week.
Big week. So, quick recap: the big week is really more than just a match on the pitch.
Yeah.
It's about facing your past, whether it's ex-husbands, ex-teammates, or even ex-versions of yourself. This episode really centers on the showdown between AFC Richmond versus West Ham, but we think the real story is internal.
Yeah, so many verses, right? Like Ted versus Nate, but also Ted versus his own avoidance.
Yeah, and then there's Rebecca versus Rupert, which is somehow masked as a soccer rivalry.
Yeah, that's not about soccer at all. Nate versus Nate, right? Is he's starting to it's weighing on him how he was last season.
Yeah, it sure is. And Keeley meets Jack for the first time.
I don't even like thinking about that initial. That would be awful.
Quite awkward.
Yeah. Roy and Jamie. Jamie is aiming to get better with some training.
Yeah. And Shandy is really starting to push the boundaries of the working relationship with Keeley and personal relationship, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes.
And then Beard and Roy take matters into their own hands in trying to motivate AFC Richmond against West Ham at halftime.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? Is there any particular topic that you're really anxious to dive in on for this episode?
So yeah, fairly early on, Beard and Roy are talking about how they're going to set up the team. And they said, okay, so we could do the 4-4-2, right? And then, but Nate will think we're doing the false 9, but then he's going to assume we're going to do the 4-4-2. So then he'll assume we're doing the 5-4-1. And so we should, and I was like, woo, all of that. And they get back to Nate's false 9, right? Yeah. And I thought, overthinking is a very real thing. As a matter of fact, just this week, I saw somebody comment on the fact that overthinking is just the kiss of death for anything. How about over executing? Like
those are wise words.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk about first.
Well, I think it's pretty appropriate because what do we talk about all the time? We talk about defeating the blank page.
Yeah, and don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Or done.
It's just overthinking everything. I think as I think back, especially early on in my career, but it still plagues me to this day. Overthinking on almost anything that I do ends up producing, I think, a worse result. I don't need to look much further than my hobby, my passion, which is on the golf course. Yeah. Anytime I overthink, it ends up poorly, without a doubt.
You get that.
What's that? Yeah,
I said you get the yips, which I didn't want to say out loud.
That's the least concerning part. I think overthinking in anything in a professional environment never, ever leads to any good outcome.
Paralyzing.
Yeah. There's a difference, though, I think, between overthinking and brainstorming. And I think we need to make that pretty clear, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think all ideas on the table to open up the top of funnel thinking in that regard. You shouldn't shut that down. One of my bosses would have a flag up. If he put the flag up, there are no bad ideas, no criticisms of ideas, everything's on the table. And then after 10 minutes, flag down. So now let's weed through and get to the ideas we want to do. I think of one of my favorite words is perseverating, right? The overthinking of where you just stew on something until it really does freeze you and gets you stuck.
Yeah. For those little behind the scenes sausage making here, I think Marnie has told me many times, you're perseverating too much over this now. Please stop. That is good advice. I think words to live by, for sure. So
What?
do you think they outsmarted themselves in the show? Overthinking?
Oh, I mean, I think that's what they were trying to communicate that to us
Yeah.
for sure, right?
Yeah, I think it was funny when Higgins came in and really brought up a point that in all their overthinking they did not consider, which is how's Zava going to feel about being
Yeah,
the
yeah.
false nine?
And funny you mention what other people are thinking, because the next thing I wanted to bring up was actually Zava, who said, "Don't listen to all the talking heads," as people were listening to all of the pundits again. And I
Yeah,
thought that is another good piece of advice. Um, you and I, now that we have the business of you out, talk about how everybody's got an answer, but they might not have your answer,
yeah,
right? And then Zava's saying, cut out that noise.
yeah.
So,
Even when they're facing in your direction, I think that's always something to really remember. You know, we talk we sometimes we talk about this whole notion of an echo chamber, right, where everybody is you're soliciting input from people who have the same thoughts and
yeah,
ideas and will
yeah,
agree with you all the time. And I think that was the I agree with your message as a whole, but I think Zava made a point to say, all right, they're tooting our horn, right? But we need to ignore them. We need to take focus.
yep,
And Jamie said that as well. Focus, baby. He's right. But it was kind of weird because Zava had some good one liners in this show. It wasn't just that one. And
yeah.
it was a little out of context, but his message to Zero about being
Yes.
whoever you need to be,
You
whoever
can
you
be
want
whoever
to
you
be.
want to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He wants to be Van Damme, apparently.
Yeah, as Ted would say very early on in the series, I don't know if he realizes how emotionally healthy that is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That was the same thing that Jamie said basically in a different way back when.
So, so funny you mention that, because I have been thinking about how Zava and Jamie, both divas in different ways, but they have made darn sure that Zava was not just another Jamie Tartt, right?
Yep.
Because they'd have to take a similar path. So he is a very different, but interesting that, like, I like who I am. And then Van Damme, you can be whoever you want to be. Yeah, that's good catch. That's a good one.
Oh, a little behind the scenes. Marty doesn't often say I have a good catch, so that's two behind the scenes we've got going on here. All right, my turn. So the the one thing that I wanted to cover, because I think it tends to happen quite a bit, is the whole notion that the team finds out that it was really Nate who tore down the sign,
Yeah,
and Beard, along with Trent's genius, and checking the recordings, and Roy find the video. They show it to Ted, and Ted's like, "Squash it. You know,
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't need this."
yeah.
But of course,
Hmm.
Ted is a little preoccupied with Rebecca at halftime, and Beard uh, and Roy actually show the video to the team, and they come out. I forget the words they use: dirty,
Oh,
angry,
yeah, on fire. Yeah,
all those types of
yeah,
words, ending up with 3 red cards. Clearly, does not work the
yeah,
way they intended to work. But when you talk about motivations, a lot of people will try to find a way to use anger as a motivation.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, it only works so far. Um,
Okay.
like you can only, I get that that can be motivating in the business world. They often say if you want to take out your competitor, that's sort of a big North Star idea that you can go for. But
Mm.
when you get to that level where you have done that, your motivation is almost gone, right? So you have to have something beyond the anger, because something's going to remove that anger, even if it's just time, because you just can't stay in that hot, stressful situation for a long period of time. What did you have in mind? I feel like I'm giving the wrong answer on that one.
No, I don't think you're giving the wrong answer at all. As a matter of fact, we may have talked about this in season 1 of this podcast, but that was so long ago that I'll say it again. I do recall a time um, when I was in consulting, and we had one of our lead consultants actually leave us,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Organize a coup, so to speak, took a couple of consultants and directly engaged with one of our clients. And my gosh, we were angry. We were furious. It ended up that we were just spending all of our cycles, not only figuring out ways to stop it, but to, in some ways, get a little bit of revenge and get them out of that particular
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
Um, and we put everything else on hold, and we let things. We got sloppy. Things that we would normally take care of were being ignored, put to the wayside because we were so focused on rectifying this situation. I'm not going to use the word revenge, but it was pretty much
Yeah.
revenge.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll never forget, at some point, thank God we had a leader that saw this and said, this is not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
the
not
right
the
thing
way
to
to
do for
be.
our customer. It's not the right thing to do for our existing employees. It's not the right thing to do for us, because exactly as you said, it it's not sustainable. It
Yeah.
wasn't long term. It would have been done over and done with, and everybody would have been the worse for it. So I think wherever possible, you know, motivation is great. The wrong kind of motivation is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I always try to keep that in the back of my mind for sure.
So, with that in mind, the notes I had taken was they were playing under stress,
Hmm.
right? Because of this anger and pressure. And when you are behaving under stress, you revert from your aspirational goals to your primal way of being, right? Fight or flight kick in.
Yeah,
And so that's what really came to mind is anger creates the stress when you're not your best version. Ted's all about helping them become their best version. 0.0 people played as their best version in that. Um, so, when you're fearful or angry and you're moving to survival or safety, it just doesn't play
yeah.
well.
I think it's important to point out that your primal being, that fight or flight, is very different than you acting in accordance with your core
Yeah,
values.
yeah, yeah. It's
I
not.
think some people think it's the same. It's not, because you have all sorts of things. Just ask me when I have a panic attack, right? There are things that take over my mind, and I have no idea who that is. Not only do I not like it, but it's not how I feel on a day to day basis, and
Yeah.
that's how everyone feels when they're under stress, for sure.
Yeah, I get super tactical bossy. Depending on the scenario. I know. I mean, I can picture it really changes your decision making, right? It
Hmm.
it also changes you're disconnected mentally from so there's a gap. I believe the technical term is cognitive dissonance, and when I say I believe, that means I wrote it down because I had to look it up. I don't keep that one handy. Um, there's also greater potential for burnout because you just can't live in that state. And it's, I think what you're speaking to is sort of, it is almost contrary to your integrity, right? It's kind of challenging your own integrity because
Yep.
it's not who you really want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, along those lines, since we're talking about integrity and who you want to be, there was that awkward, embarrassing uh, moment where Keeley first met Jack.
Yeah.
And um, let's just say that even before that meeting, when Keeley found out that she was going to meet the person behind the funding of
Okay.
KJPR,
Yeah.
she fully admitted that she was nervous.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious, any advice? What do you think about when you're meeting somebody for whatever reason you deem as important, or somebody that has some sort of high stakes potential um, in your life? How do you get through that? How do you manage and navigate that?
Well, I think it gets better as you mature. I can remember in high school, I had to call the speaker for our graduation ceremony. And I thought this was a very important person. I remember thinking I wasn't dressed well enough to stand in the main office and make this phone call. And I was trying to be very proper. But then when I talked to them and they were just human, I could relax and just speak like a normal human being. So I think the challenge is to just really be your authentic version. I think that's the challenge. Um, I I'm going to throw this in there because I think it's funny. We've chatted with Billy Brimblecombe, right, who
Yeah.
who runs Thundergong with Jason Sudeikis, and when we've chatted with him, he said some people get so weird when they meet Jason. He said, if you ever get to meet Jason, don't be weird. And the only thing that goes on in my mind is I know if I ever meet Jason Sudeikis, only weird things are going to come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that what comes to mind is you have to fight to reduce the noise in your head and to just realize they're another person and to show up as your authentic version. If Keeley could just be confident about who she was, which is what Rebecca was trying to give
Yep.
her, right? Rebecca knows who she is, so she's unaffected by that. That's what do you think?
Oh, I agree. I will say that again, like many other things, this was something I certainly struggled with, especially when I was younger. So I wholeheartedly agree that as you mature, it becomes easier and easier. Um,
But don't you think
but
that's because you know who you are, and so you're well aware of how you
yeah,
want to show up?
I think that's definitely part
Yeah,
of it. I think, I used to approach meetings like that, like when Keely was meeting Jack, she knew she was going to meet her at some point. So to me, it was all about preparation. I would try to learn everything about the person I was going to meet, which is a great. I think that's a really good thing to do. Don't
yeah. I was
get
gonna
me
say I
wrong.
still do
Yeah,
that.
100%. But I still remember even after doing that, it was, oh my gosh, my hands they're all clammy, they're wet, I'm cold, my voice is quivering, all those fun types of things. Um, and it does come down to feeling good about yourself at the end
Yeah,
of the day. But it also helps me remembering that, you know what, I've made some really bad first impressions because I was so nervous. It's kind of like overthinking things. When you're really nervous, the best part of you typically doesn't come out, at least in my case.
yeah. No, that's true.
And I made it through those. So again, with the maturity comes experience, and the fact that, you know what, I had some really great relationships where I didn't make a good first impression, and I overcame that is very, very helpful for me. So you combine that with the obviously that's the experience, but with a better understanding of who I am as a person, and the fact that, you know what, I'm not Marty Stockman. Let me again fill the audience in. It's really hard when both Marty and I meet somebody for the first time because you're very outgoing, very energetic, and that's not me. But understanding who I am, that that helps, and I'm pretty good with that.
It's funny you say that because when I meet someone new, I often think, what would Nick do? And you would have a great question. You would also know everything about whatever their favorite hobby is, regardless. And for if goodness knows, if it's a sport, you're going to know all of their favorite players, games, anything. I don't even try to keep up there, but I do try to think about what would Nick do here. And I know you would ask questions and you would be a great listener. So, I mean, I think that yeah, it is more behind the scenes baseball or whatever that saying is, which I'm getting wrong. Not very Ted of me to get the saying wrong, um, but yeah, I think everyone can learn from the other, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, about how do I typically show up and how might I want to show up, and planning for that.
Yeah, and asking questions is a good one, right? Because if you're not sure what to say, let somebody else speak, and
Yeah,
eventually you'll find your voice in whatever answers come up for sure.
yeah.
What else you got in this episode?
So I had a few other notes. Oh, Rupert telling Nate, good job, you did what's best for you. And then Nate says, night, Rupert. And Rupert says, Mr. Mannion.
Mr. Mannion,
Oh, that's, yeah,
power
just,
trip.
yeah, anybody that plays that, I don't even want to talk about it. Um, Now, of course, I took a big note when Ted said he was a work in progress, because this is actually the motivation for our newsletter, which is a snarky little satirical newsletter called Work in Progress. So you bet I put a big old star around that on my paper.
Work in progress.ai, little blatant publicity there for sure. And it's I think what's kind of, again, the brilliance of the writers, we say it week after week after week, this whole notion, the theme, Ted, am I a mess? Right. First, Sassy tells him he's a mess. Then he goes to the Diamond Dogs asking if he's a mess. And then he goes to Rebecca again, asking if he's a mess. And the reality of it is the Diamond Dogs call him out, right? You're a mess. Of course you're a mess because you're asking about this and you're not dealing with the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
which is that we're playing
Yeah.
Nate this week. And the whole fact of that Ted is avoiding that whole situation
Yep.
almost in its entirety, just hoping things are going to work out. But at the very end of the show, while he doesn't really address Nate, he tries to make small talk and be nice with Nate. He actually calls up Michelle and said, you know what, the fact that you're with Dr. Jacob, that really ticks me off. So he finally came around to it, but it was not with who we thought he would confront his feelings with. It was, at least during this episode, it was with Michelle.
Yeah. So that is one of 3 notes that I put around how you should deliver tough news or bad news or feedback, which is one-on-one.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, when she pulled Rupert aside and said, I saw you with your assistant, right?
Yep.
She pulled him aside and said it. Keeley to Shandy.
Yep.
Jack was standing right there. She could have played a big power trip. Look, I'm the boss. Shandy, you got to change that. Pulled her aside. And then Ted talking to Michelle. I just think that's always an important leadership lesson, that regardless of the emotions in that you need to keep in check, that you need to deliver tough feedback one-on-one.
100%. I mean, number one, it's the opposite of what Rupert would do. I mean, based on what we just talked
Yeah, if
about,
you
right?
just think about what Rupert would
Because
do and do the opposite, you're in good shape.
I mean, because I think that's power trip. That's command and control, dressing somebody down in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
It really ends up destroying trust on the team. And how often do we talk about the importance of trust
Yep.
for teamwork? And I think that there is always, when you're delivering feedback, it's awkward. You have to give somebody a chance to process that information in an environment where they could be as authentic as they possibly could be. And in receiving that feedback, whether they agree with it, disagree with it, however they process it, if they're in a group setting like that, it typically will not come out the way either they want or you want as a leader, in my
It's
opinion.
it's interesting because the 3 receivers didn't say anything,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I remember it. It's not always going to play out that way, for the record.
The way it plays out in TV, for sure.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Oh, what is the writer going to say? Like, they say nothing. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. It was a pretty big episode,
It was a
for
very big
sure.
episode. Yeah.
Did we miss anything? Anything
Well,
that was on your list?
no, those were all of the big leadership elements. I did like the fact that it starts with Roy training Jamie at 4 a.m. and he's like, "Have you lost your mind?" And then when Roy shows up the next time, Jamie is ready to go. All right, I'm in.
Yeah.
So I'm
I think
excited to see where that goes.
important to remember that growth isn't always this loud and blaring thing, right? There was no big speech there. They're
Right.
just showing we're putting in the time.
Yep.
It's just consistent effort. And both sides, Jamie's committed to training hard and Roy is fully committed to coaching. And at the end of the day, that almost always is your best chance for success, for sure.
It definitely wins in the hearts of the viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. They got us. That's for darn sure.
Indeed.
All right, I guess that is our whistle. So game's over, but the leadership lessons, they keep playing.
Yeah, they certainly do. And as a reminder, you can find us here, there, and everywhere on social at Lead It Like Lasso. And of course, leaditlikelasso.com. We'd love for you to check out our snarky sidekick of a newsletter that we just mentioned, workinprogress.ai.
Yeah, we'd also love for you to check out our new book, thebusinessofyou.ai. So until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep leading it like Lasso.